Having built three successful education companies over the last 30 years, here are some experiences and tips that I have for you that might be helpful as you start your own journey. First is understanding the difference between being disciplined and being rigid. I think we often confuse being disciplined as being rigid, right? Like we want to follow the plan. And what we really need to be is disciplined about the process. And the process has, uh, it's iterative and it has a lot of ambiguity in the process, but you have to believe that you are going to follow this entrepreneurial journey and there's a process to that versus being rigid, which is, you write a business plan per se and you want to follow it to a T because that's what the plan says you should do. And that's really taking away some of the control that you have as an entrepreneur. For example, in my career, I've made a lot of assumptions in the past about something that may work perfectly well at one district might work equally well in another, even if it's a neighboring district. And what I found is that's just not true. Otherwise, a math program that works in one district would just get equally good results in another. And clearly that hasn't happened yet. And so there's so many other factors that go into something like this that we have to consider as entrepreneurs. Whether it's about your product, the market, or the problem, or just your interest in entrepreneurship, I like to test my assumptions around this monthly and quarterly. Quarterly is, much bigger picture around the strategies and whether the strategies worked and thinking about what new strategies I need to put in place. Monthly, I'm mostly focused on the tactics. Did I execute those tactics the way I thought, um, or some of the assumptions around what may work, getting me the results that I wanted, and that is constantly a process that you go through as an entrepreneur. Things that you might be testing are just assumptions around product market fit or the way you describe your product or service, the messaging around it. It just may or may not resonate based off the assumptions that you have, and you have to constantly refine and tweak those. It could also be around just the assumptions you made about being an entrepreneur and the lifestyle that you live. Maybe you find just having so much flexibility is too much for you and you like that 9 to 5 routine, and you could create that in your entrepreneurial journey, but those are, you know intentional decisions that you have to make around that. And even within having that structure of a 9 to 5 and having a normal, like what you consider a normal schedule, you're going to see that it is pretty unstructured still within that period because people aren't scheduling meetings with you that you don't know about. You don't have a manager. You're making a lot of the decisions around your workday experience on your own as an entrepreneur. Finally, I find that I'm most successful when I'm able to reframe course correction and changes that I have to make to my vision and strategies. Sometimes when we make these changes, we feel like there are mistakes. And really, on one hand, you could say they are, but it is part of the essence of being an entrepreneur. You're going to make a lot of mistakes because if you can perfectly execute on everything as an entrepreneur, it'd be super easy. And entrepreneurship's quite hard. And the hardest thing is you have to learn from all the mistakes you make and then constantly evolve your thinking around it. And so I really try to reframe that iteration and evolution of your vision as the life of an entrepreneur, as opposed to saying that, I made a mistake in the assumptions or the strategies or whatever. That's just part of being an entrepreneur. One way to envision what entrepreneurship's like, especially in the early stages, is like when you open up a jigsaw puzzle for the first time, right? There's a vision for what it's going to look like, and then you open up the box, flip over all the pieces, and you see all of these individual pieces, and those are like your individual tasks. And the first thing you do is you start organizing all of these pieces based off of the vision that you have. And so you start to group them in, and then you start developing strategies like I'm going to start with the corners and sides and such. And so you're starting to fill in all these puzzle pieces. And I really see entrepreneurship like that. And you're constantly going back and forth between the individual pieces and how they fit together to the big picture, right? And you always have to go back and see if it fits to the big picture. Otherwise, you're just doing tasks that waste time or go in the wrong direction.